What's going on, everyone? My name is Jasmine. On today's episode of the Slam Project, we're going to be talking about two deaths that happened on the Rosebud Sioux Reservation. The first one is 15-year-old Alize Millard. He died in July 2019 under suspicious circumstances, and his death was staged to look like a suicide. The second one is 19-year-old Autumn Emery. She also died in July 2019, but her death was ruled a suicide. And before I get started, I just want to thank Kelloland News. They've been doing MIP stories on their newscasts, and they featured both of these cases, and without them, there would be absolutely no information about them on the internet. And if you would like to see more videos on missing and murdered Indigenous people, click that subscribe button and the notification bell. Now let's get right into it. Alize Millard was born on May 12, 2004 to parents Jamie and Adam. He was a Rosebud Sioux tribal member and lived off the reservation in Gregory, South Dakota. The Rosebud Reservation is about 2 million acres. It is located next to the Pine Ridge Reservation in southern South Dakota. Alize was 15 years old in the summer of 2019. He had just graduated from the 8th grade and was going to be a freshman the next school year. He spent that summer with his grandparents, Mary and Peter Gibbs. They lived on the reservation in an area known as Grass Mountain. His grandma said that Alize was always smiling and never had a bad day. Alize was traveling with his grandparents for the entire month of June before they returned to Grass Mountain in early July. When they returned, Alize's girlfriend named Winter spent a few days with him at his grandparents' house. She was also from the Rosebud Res and lived in the town of Mission. She said that Alize was a grandma and grandpa's boy, and they all had a great time while she stayed with them. They barbecued, hung out, and got to know each other. Winter's best memories of Alize come from this time that they all spent together. Winter has stated that some of Alize's friends on the reservation were into drugs and gangs. She went on to say that Alize was a good kid and did not take part in these activities. She last spoke to him on July 7th. She was at her grandparents' house on July 8th and had missed some calls from him. She stated that the last call was at 10 p.m. She tried to contact him when she got home, but he was not online, and she said that he usually was when he was at his grandparents'. I am thinking that they were trying to either Facebook message or Facebook video call. Winter just assumed that he was out with friends or perhaps took a walk somewhere. But after Alize left his grandparents' home the night of July 8th, he was never seen alive again. He had only been on the reservation for a little over a week since returning from his travels with his grandparents. Not too far from his grandparents is an area called Ghost Hawk Canyon. Local law enforcement officials know the area as Boy Scout Cabin Falls. Alize's grandpa says the place is also called the dumping grounds by local teens. This is where Alize's body would be found on July 10th by two people who were out for a hike. The spot is so remote that there is no cell phone service. The hikers had to walk back to their car and drive to where they could get a signal to call for help. Responding tribal police had to get the fire department to come out and clear a path for them. The path to where the body was found was overgrown with trees and difficult to navigate. When he was discovered, Alize was hanging from a tree. Alize's grandpa was called to the scene to identify his body. The body bag was unzipped to show his face, and he could see a cord wrapped around his neck. The area he was found at is about a quarter-mile walk from the road that leads into the canyon. Captain Ivor Crow Eagle with the Rosebud Tribal PD stated that bonfires often take place out there and that it is a well-known party spot. The location is often littered with trash and beer cans. This is an indicator that Alize was probably not at the spot by himself. Special Agent Robert Saddlemeyer with the Rosebud Tribal PD said that there are no witnesses to what happened to Alize and that his death is suspicious. When officials first commented on the discovery of Alize's body, they stated that there was other physical evidence present, but they could not comment on it. The autopsy report also cannot be obtained because the case is still open with the FBI. But when his family received his death certificate, the cause of death is listed as asphyxiation by ligature strangulation hanging. Then a note also says 3rd and 4th degree burns. How the injury occurred says hanging and then set on fire. Manner of death says pending investigation. How can his death only be labeled as suspicious and not an actual homicide? How can someone hang themselves and then set themselves on fire?
If it was suicide, could someone hang themselves and then set themselves on fire?
Is that a serious question?
Yeah.
Yeah. How? Nobody's going to be able to hang themselves to death and start themselves on fire. Could have he been smoking a cigarette and a cigarette caught him on fire? That's a probability. That's a possibility. But we don't know.
The family in no way believes that Alize committed suicide. They believe he was murdered and they think they know who did it. Now, these burns very well could have come from a bonfire. These were known to take place at the location where he was found. Perhaps a struggle or fight of some sort took place and he fell into the fire. But it is entirely possible that he could have been murdered somewhere else and then taken to the spot where he was found. The tribal PD and the FBI spent hours combing over the area after his body was found. But with all the garbage in the area, it must have been difficult to determine what was evidence and what was not. The family also done their own investigation online. They discovered some Facebook posts where it appears the people responsible are bragging about what they did. They also believe that Alize was killed at a party in Parmalee and that they know of at least 7 people who were present when it happened. Everything they found was turned over to investigators. Special Agent Robert Saddlemeyer has stated that when they question a potential witness, their story is never the same as what Alize's family says. He has also said that the FBI has conducted hundreds of interviews. When Kelloland News first interviewed Rosebud Tribal PD, they stated that they were very hopeful of solving the case and that they always get to the bottom of it. Then, when interviewed a year later, they discussed the difficulty speaking to witnesses and said that the FBI is in charge of the case. The FBI will only confirm that the case is still open. The case has never been closed as a suicide. The tree Alize was found hanging from has since been blessed with prayer ties and sage. The tree also does not appear to be far from the ground. I am not sure of the actual height, but it does appear to be low. Another suspicious thing happened around the time of Alize's death. A young 19-year-old mother named Autumn Emery also went missing from the Rosebud Res. Autumn was also known by the name Wanayetu Loves War. There are conflicting reports of when she was last seen. I am not sure if this stems from when she was actually last seen by family and the date she was reported as missing. But the story goes that she was last seen at the Rosebud Casino on Thursday, July 4th, 2019 at the 4th of July powwow. Then she was reported missing 3 days later when no one heard from her. The family began searching day and night. They also received tips along the way. On July 9th, one of Autumn's aunts posted on Facebook and said that she had been missing for 3 days and it was very unusual for her not to be in contact with anyone for this long. She also said that she was last seen walking north from a friend's home in Old Two Strike at about 1 p.m. on Sunday, July 7th. This would be the approximate day she was reported as missing. The search was ultimately focused between Parmalee and Rosebud. The family tried to search near a home where she was last known to be at, but were told they could not search there without the police. With threats of the police being called over harassing the public, they left the area. The family sought out help from search and rescue, but were told that help could not commence until the tribal president signed off on the order. But they were out of town, so they were told to wait. But Autumn's family was not going to stop, and they put out a public plea on Facebook asking for volunteer searchers, and about 200 people showed up. Tips on her whereabouts and who she was with kept coming in, but nothing panned out. The day Alize's body was found on July 10th, Rosebud Sioux Tribe Law Enforcement Services put a post out on Facebook about her disappearance. The desperation to find her was fully setting in after the discovery of Alize. On July 16th, 9 days after she was last seen, Rosebud Tribe's Emergency Preparedness Program, or EEP, was activated, and an official search for Autumn was launched in the Two Strike area. This is the same area where there was a sighting of her walking north and where the family was told they could not search without law enforcement. 4 hours into the search, Autumn's shoes were found near a bridge up the road from Ghost Hawk Park. There also were reports of her last known to be in Parmalee, and the distance from there to the park is about 9 miles. The distance from the Rosebud Casino to the park is about 31 miles, and the distance from Two Strike to the park is about 5 miles. Autumn's body would be found about an hour later in an area that is northwest from where her shoes were found. This spot was not far from where her grandparents lived. And most eerily, this is just a few miles from where Alize's body was found. There was no real mention online about the state of her body when it was found, but it was stated that she was found in a patch of trees and that her body was bloated from the heat. The decomposition made it hard to determine what exactly happened, but authorities quickly labeled her death as a suicide. The family does not agree with this ruling. They said that they learned there were scratches on her body and that she had texted her sister shortly before going missing, and she seemed normal. They also say that no autopsy was conducted because of the suicide ruling and that authorities pushed for her cremation, which the family agreed to. Now, there was a lot happening at this time, and the family might have thought that cremation was the best option at the time due to the condition of her body. I also do think that authorities should not suggest that a person be cremated. The decision and wishes of the family need to be respected at all times, and the family needs to be given its proper space to make such decisions. With her cremation, we may never get answers to some obvious questions about her death. For instance, her shoes were found near a bridge. Could they have been thrown over the bridge while someone was driving over it? Could the condition of her feet be determined? Did they present a condition of her walking barefoot for a few miles? There were reports of her body having scratches. Could she have been dragged into the tree line after she was already dead? Was she fully clothed? And was she also found hanging from a tree? Or how did they say she supposedly killed herself? How long do they think she was dead? All I ever seen is that they said she was bloated from the summer heat. Could any sexual assault be determined? Did they even look for evidence of this type of activity? These two young indigenous people went missing around the same time, in the same area, and were found within miles of each other. They were around the same age and could have known the same people. One was ruled a suicide and the other was not, even though Alize's death was presented to be a suicide by hanging from a tree. If his body was not burned, his death very may well have been ruled a suicide as well. The Rosebud Reservation also experiences a high volume of suicide deaths. But the death of Autumn Emery seemingly has more questions than answers. Suicide deaths are usually cut and dry. Her death could have been more appropriately labeled as suspicious. I encourage you, if you have any information on the deaths of Alize Millard or Autumn Emery, please contact your local FBI office or submit an online tip at tips.fbi.gov. Thank you so much for watching today's video. And if you knew Alize or Autumn, please share any memories that you have of them down below. And I will see you in my next video.